Hi, I'm Vanchika from White Falcon Publishing, and today I'm in conversation with the author of the book, Great Telugu Short Stories, Sir Rayasam Srinivas Rao. And sir, I'm super excited to be in this conversation with you today, and I would love to chat about the book, the writing of this book, the making of this book, so to say. Before I start with the questions and answers, I would also like to introduce you briefly. The volume follows is a follow-up of volume 1 by the author, which contains English translations of 25 of the finest short stories published between 1910 and 1947. The current volume contains English translations of 35 extraordinary short stories by 17 distinguished Telugu authors first published between 1948 and 1970. All these authors have a special in the annals of Telugu literature for their contributions. Many of them have won national and state recognition through Sahitya Akademi awards. The stories presented in the volume captures all the themes, movements, and trends that have swept across the Telugu land and in post-independence era, such as socialism, communism, feminism, and the civil rights movement and the Dalit movement. This rich set of stories represent the lives of Telugu people, including the urban and rural upper middle class, the downtrodden professionals, and the beggars. A sincere attempt has been made in these English translations to appeal to the global reader while retaining the original Telugu cultural nuances as much as possible. Sir, I welcome you to this interview, and I would also like to show the audience the book cover. And this is how beautiful it looks. It's the hardcover, and I think that's convincing enough to get a copy for yourself. And this is the paperback of the same book. My first question to you was something around translation. What actually inspired you to undertake the ambitious project of translating 100 short stories?
Thank you, Vanshika. Thank you for this opportunity, and thanks to White Falcon Publishing for publishing and for your design team for doing such a wonderful job. I've got a lot of feedback from within India and outside that the design of the book came out very, very well. Both the cover and inside. In fact, my second son, who is a designer himself and a very accomplished architect, has also said the same thing. He said, "Dad, you didn't take my help, but the design came out very well." So thank you for all that, and thanks for this, conversation today. Now, coming back to your question, why translation and why 100 stories? Yeah, 100 is just a number, right? It's a good number, it's a sizable number, and no one has done a mixed anthology of Telugu stories into English of this kind of number. Any translation that happened has happened for a single author, that too with the help of Sahitya Akademi. If the original Telugu book got a Academy Award, then the Sahitya Akademi typically sponsored or helped to get that set of stories of that single author. Typically, I think we call it omnibus into English. But no one sat down and did it, collected multiple authors' stories, and then no one bothered to do 100 of them. Okay. So there are two things here. This is an anthology of multiple authors because I've read all of these when I was young. I was in college, university, and just at the beginning of my career. Then there was a long gap. Then I started reading as I started winding down my corporate life, and approaching what you call quote unquote retirement. Okay. So I always felt, while I can't write so creatively, but I loved those stories, and I loved also other English stories and that were translated from Russian and other languages in English. So I said, why can't these great Telugu stories be taken out into the global arena and introduced to English authors? Okay. And once I decided I could do that with my limited medium knowledge of both the languages, then came the question of how should I do it? You know, then I said, I'll not do any one single author, which I did already prior to this, Mr. Kalipatnam Ramarao. This time I said I'll do multiple authors, and I'll also approach it chronologically. I'll start with 1910 when the first Telugu story was published, then go on till 1990, where my familiarity ends. Honestly, I didn't read too many stories published after 90. So it would be a little incorrect to go and say I've read a lot of them, so I can pick some and I can translate some. So my familiarity is between 1910 and 1990. Then I wanted to divide that into three periods, and do total 100. And so far, I've managed to do 60. And the chronological sequence is because the story and the author's mindsets evolved over a period of time, right? People took up certain topics before independence, and then the topics changed, post independence, and they changed further once, India started becoming more and more liberal, more educated, more westernized. So along the way, there were a lot of changes. So I wanted to pick the best of the stories, not exceeding 100, and do it. So that's the background.
This, translating a number like 100 is a lot of work to do. And I think you have mentioned to me over a call that you have recently retired, and it takes a lot to pen down something so important in the field of literature, so to say. How did you make the time for all of it?
So once you retire, there is time, right? So question is, how do you put that time to good use? So I
Yeah.
had in my corporate life working with global clients, one thing I've learned is some discipline, and organizing my time and the ability to use tools to use my time. So yet it was not that easy. Each volume 1 and volume 2, took nearly 1 year from the first story to publishing. So, and the third volume might take even more time because of some other personal challenges I've been facing this year. So it's about methodically setting some goals, but one doesn't have to rigidly stick to them like in the corporate life, where you have a customer pressure and client pressure and all. Here it's a self-imposed pressure. Yet I decided to stick to that deadline, read several stories, pick what I like, because if you see my one of the chapters in the book, I said these stories are some of the best, and also among the best, some I liked. So it has to be something I liked, something that appealed to me, and stirred something inside me. So that means if I read 10 or 20, maybe I'll like one and put my effort to translate it. So first there is a reading, then there is a picking the story, then translating it. So and continue that effort for 35 stories. So it took time. In between there are distractions like travel, health, and other issues. But I'm happy. I mean, it worked out well. Mostly I could stick to my schedules with a little bit delays here and there. And there are people like most importantly my wife, who supported me a lot in this process. When I'm like in this my den doing this, all the support like I got during my corporate life, I got the same type of support during this exercise also. So I think, yeah, I'm glad I could make it happen. So
I feel, that a lot of it has come because of a very good routine and a very good discipline that you have kept up in your life, along with the support of people. My next question to you was, how do you approach preserving these cultural nuances, such as idioms and context-specific details, while making them accessible to global English-speaking audience? Because to translate idioms, to translate some terms are very difficult, and we do not have translations for all Indian languages.
yeah, so that's a good question, Vanshika. So I had to think about it very carefully, even in volume 1, and then improve it further in volume 2 based on some of the feedback I received. So in one line, what I did was I remained very, very faithful to the original Telugu version. That means if an idiom or if a proverb or if a sentence has to be translated to English, I just translated it to English from Telugu. I used English as a medium rather than I didn't try to anglicize it. For example, I'll give you an example. When we are faced with a difficult situation, right? Suppose very tough, you're pushed into a corner. In English, what do we say? You have a choice between a rock and a hard place, right? That's the English way of doing it, British or American. But in Telugu, we say, or in Hindi also, maybe there is an equivalent because Indian cultures are all intertwined. In Telugu, we say there is a well in front of me and there is a deep pit behind me. And that also rhymes in Telugu. Because the well we call as Nuyi and the pit we call as Goi. So it rhymes. So in Telugu, that's what we use. So what I did was, when I'm translating such sentences, I didn't use the English one. The rock and hard place. I translated the Telugu one and I used a footnote to explain it. So if you notice the book, it is completely full of footnotes in the same page. I didn't even summarize them towards the end because I know as a reader, when I'm reading, if I have to jump to the end of the book to refer to something, it's a distraction. If I give the footnote in the same page, it can maintain the flow. So this is something I've done and received positive feedback from people. So I used footnotes. I translated them as it is. Another example is, for example, many Telugu writers, to describe beautiful moonlight, they say it's like white flour spread, all over the place. So now imagine thick white flour, like an atta or whatever, or any other rice flour or whatever we say. Does it exactly resemble moonlight? Maybe or may not be, depending on how we look at it. But that's the idiom or the expression many writers have used. So I've translated it as it is, and given a footnote to explain. And another thing, like, for example, there is a saying in Telugu that you take a dog and make it sit on a throne, golden throne actually. Okay, it doesn't change its old habit. Just because you made it a king, you put the dog on a throne. A dog is a dog. So this is used to describe people who are not good, who are bad, but you give them high position, high power, but still their attitude and their behavior doesn't change. So I translated it as it is in English, and I explained it. It comes as a popular Telugu proverb. I didn't try to look for an English equivalent. That would have robbed the book of the original Telugu culture and the Telugu context. So by following that discipline and also using many other names, like, for example, we call elder sister as akka, like
Yeah.
Didi, But in English, sister is sister. You have to say elder, younger, and uncle. We say mama, there are words like baba. I used all of them extensively. And then I explained them, saying that this is, younger brother to my father. This is older brother to my father. This is like mausi. In Hindi, you say bua, kaka. Like that, I have, use them as it is, and then I've used footnotes to explain the context. So my belief is that will give the reader a context of how Telugu people think, how they address each other, what kind of language they use. That's what I've tried to do.
Yeah, makes sense. I think that's how we also preserve languages while translating as well. So it's
Right.
a preservation in a way, right? That I have tried to do through the book. There's a
Mhm.
historical context and there is the literary artistry that an author carries when they're translating or even when they're writing the book. How did you manage to
Mhm.
balance the two?
I tried to stick to the original narrative very closely. In fact, when I first went to meet Sri Kalipatnam Ramarao and took his permission to translate his stories, that's the one, while giving his permission, that's the one sentence he said: please stick as close to the original as possible and maintain, because in his stories, there are some that touch just middle class lives. They're very simple. If you look at it, what conflicts happen in a middle class family, how they resolve the conflicts, and then he graduated to writing a lot about leftist topics, the divisions in the society, how farmers and peasants were being exploited by landlords and landowners and merchants and these kind of people, money lenders. So he touched upon those topics as he moved along, as the society changed and as his own vision improved and increased and broadened. So, but what I tried to do is, in this volume, I gave a brief context of the story. Is it a rural setting? Is it in the backdrop of some kind of a particular situation? I gave a one paragraph or maybe two paragraph context to the story. Then, while narrating, I didn't try to bring any of my own thinking to it. I just narrated the original. So the reader will have to take it, or leave it, like it or not like it, as it comes. But they're bound to like it because the original is very powerful. Even if the original is now a kind of, there is some transmission loss, as I would call it, 30-40% transmission loss because of the translation. Still, people are bound to like it, For example, you take a story called Mukkalu Pita, the three-legged stool, written by Chalam. It's about, it's a feminism story, but it doesn't brand itself anywhere as a feminist story. But Chalam has always written about empowering women, stood strongly for women, women's rights and their lives, and their ability to determine their course of their lives for themselves, etc. So this it comes out. All I did was I pick the right word that I know. I didn't use fancy words, to just show off my vocabulary or my English knowledge. I tried to see the original words and sentences they used, tried to translate it as simply or as complicatedly, which the original is, and vary the words when to reduce the boredom and other things, but still maintain the original flavor. Now, when the person reads it, whether the person understands it's a feminism story or it's a leftist story or a rural exploitation story, I think they will get the context, because I didn't impose anything of my own on it. So I believe that's the best way to stay honest and transmit the story to the English reader.
While you have mentioned how you have carried the two together, my next question somehow is related to it, but isn't related to it as well. That these literary movements are very sensitive in its nature, and literary translation is sensitive as well. How do you make sure that you don't suppress the author voice while you translate it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there is some overlap. I probably covered. Again, there is no way I can suppress them, right? And I have always seen a translator's job is to be faithful to the original, and not to. But I've also read some translations where I had the good fortune to know both the languages, English, Telugu, and in some cases, for example, Hindi and English. I can read Hindi fairly well, read, speak, write. So, and I've seen some Hindi translations into English and Telugu translations into English where some were very faithful, like I am trying to do, whereas some were and some free versions I've read online. Some looked very different. It's almost like an entirely different story, you know. So, but then if you don't know the original and you are reading only the new one, you have no way of knowing the original, right? The new one might sound okay, read okay, but you will never know the original. So all is fine. You live in your own world. You think this is the story. But I didn't want to do that because in my reader universe, I know there will be readers like me who know both the languages, who are now living in US or Europe or even in India. They can appreciate both Telugu and English, so they want to see how this fellow has actually captured the essence and translated. So I wanted to answer that question and remain faithful, and I wanted the completely English users who don't know anything about Telugu also to appreciate the story or not appreciate the story as it is. See, out of the 35 stories, some people may think some stories are dull or some stories are not. It's always bound to happen. That's their personal preference. But I didn't want to make it dull or make it flashy by putting my own stuff into that. I just took the original writers' sentences, the way they built up the conversation, the way they described the nature. For example, in a story called Nalajarla Road, DBG Tilak, it's a fascinating story actually. He describes the night so beautifully. The description of the night is so key to the entire story. It drives fear into the minds of the key characters, and that fear drives their actions. So I think I tried to look for equivalent words. I tried to look for, how exactly that description I can translate to English. I didn't add anything. If the writer said the trees are swaying or the trees look like monsters, I said yes, the trees look like monsters. I didn't add any other color or any other flavor to it. So I think by sticking to that original and staying close to the original, I hope the job gets done. So
How do you
it,
feel that, your translations would be undervalued, and how do you want to prove it otherwise?
it is undervalued, and probably it is always one step below the original writing. I mean, there is no doubt about it, because the original is always original. Creative work is creative work. But my response to that is, if there is no translation, would we be all able to read so many Russian classics today in English? How many of us can go learn Russian? No, read a Chekhov or read a Tolstoy, or we all, or a Gorky. We all read, and we appreciate, we love it. But we should remember we are reading it in English. So somebody took the pains to really carefully translate them from Russian to English. Say same way from many languages, maybe from French to English also. And so I think historically translation played a key role, maybe slightly secondary role to creative. But as English became a universal language, translating a work into English gave any regional or national work that universal visibility. So in terms of giving the universal visibility, translation has a major role. But in terms of the creative ability, a translator is always a one step lower to the creative writer. That's how I see myself. So.
And I think these were the questions I had in my mind. I wanted to talk about briefly and in detail with you. And I'm so happy that you agreed to be a part of this interview, sir. While we wrap it up, I'm so grateful that you showed up.
No, pleasure is entirely mine, and thanks for making it happen. I truly appreciate, and I hope this conversation will help more people understand the nuances behind the effort and the nuances behind translation. I think that should be the takeaway for anyone who's watching this. So truly
Right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And anyone who is watching this, you can get a copy of this book from Amazon, Flipkart, and WFP store. It's available both in hardback and paperback format, and also in ebook. So please get hold of it ASAP, and do let the author know through emails, through messages, through social media, on how important this book is, and if you like reading more such stories. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.